This podcast is brought to you by Market Convention. Ever want to visit Mammoth with your Aflac friends and family? Do you ever want to ski the slopes? Do you ever want to go into the old town? Even go hiking? Well, in Mammoth, Aflac is paying for it all if you qualify. Do it for our 2027 Market Convention. Welcome back to LA Legends, where Aflac pros share strategies, sharpen their craft, and build the next generation of leaders in the LA South market. My name is Michael Fisher.
And I'm Michelle Lee. Today's episode is focused on winning with brokers, what it takes to build strong broker relationships, and how to create that long-term success in this business. And our guest today brings a wealth of experience and perspective from years in the industry and in leadership.
Yeah, and I'm super excited because we have the Amos Award winner, Mr. Chris Della Sala. And I actually don't think a lot of people know this, but Chris was actually in my equivalent role for Colonial, absolutely crushed it. And then last year drove some massive sales. But I think closed one of the largest accounts in all of Aflac last year. It's huge. But Chris, welcome. And man, I wanted to also just give you an opportunity to kind of speak a little bit about the fact that you've actually haven't been on the broker side your entire career. You've actually been on the field side and been in our shoes before.
Yeah. First of all, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here. But yes, I even though I have spent time working in the field, as you mentioned, the Colonial version of an MKD, and actually in your same market. Um, Part of the reason that I was promoted and brought out to California to run that organization was because of my experience in the broker business. We were really struggling out here. I think at the time when I took over the operation, it was like 25% broker sales. And at the end, I had grown the organization from like a $22 million market to almost a $50 million market. And it was like 65% broker sales.
Nice.
So yeah, I've sat in your chair. I know what the field world is like. I know the things that keep them up at night. I know the things that drive them. So it's definitely a unique perspective from other of my counterparts across the country.
Yeah, for sure. And so actually, I would love for you to kind of speak to that a little bit because we have people listening that maybe are in their like first 90 days of their Aflac career. I feel like a lot of our future leaders and people that are in our like build the bench program and DSEs, and we do have some regions that are out there too that are listening. But what would you say from the jump? Like if it's like, hey, we want to start engaging with broker more, what was your starting place when you actually took over the LA market? And then what are some of the things that you would have some of these newer people or newish people start thinking about?
Well, I guess I would say I cut my teeth in this business right out of college at Mass Mutual. And I started as a 1099 agent in the field
Hmm.
selling individual disability and whole life policies, long-term care at the kitchen table at 7 o'clock at night while the family's eating dinner. It was a rough road, but I was rookie of the year my first year. And having done that, the corporate side of the business came knocking on my door. And that's how I went from 1099 W2 and I became a group rep basically for Mass Mutual's executive benefits, calling on brokers. Couldn't
Mm.
spell broker at the time. I had no idea what I was doing. And I just knew that I had to figure it out. And ironically enough, the guy that hired me into that role, who took a leap of faith because I was young and moldable and coachable, got fired 2 weeks after I started.
Whoa.
And yeah, so I was just kind of left thrown to the wolves, but I knew that I had to figure it out. So did whatever I thought I needed to do to reach out to brokers, to go knock on their doors, to try to drive business. I got my teeth kicked in more times than I care to count, but I think that's part of the game, is tripping and falling on your face a little bit and learning those lessons and getting back on the horse. So when I came into the role at Colonial out here in Southern California, I did have that experience of kind of at least knowing something about the broker market. And then from there, it was really taking the personnel on my team, the leaders and agents on my team that had done broker business or were starting to dabble in broker business and help them to refine their craft. And then as we moved forward into the future, as we brought new agents on board, we had kind of like a timeline or an expectation of, here's what you need. You need to get your feet underneath you first. You need to be walking in a straight line, know what you're doing, know how to speak the speak. And then once you go through a broker certified training course that we had, and we felt confident enough in your ability to go sit down with a broker, we would kind of unleash them for that. But a lot of the time it was not beneath me to go run broker appointments with agents, or with the nomenclature was a little bit different at
Yeah,
Colonial. RSC was a DGA, a DSC was an ADM, and I was always more than willing to go run broker appointments with
any of
anybody,
them.
agent,
Yeah.
a DSC, an RSC. It didn't matter to me, and let them watch and learn. And honestly, I think people can pretty much soak up enough from one meeting to be able to duplicate it and go back out on their own. And then it just kind of takes repetition and, persistence and constantly getting back out there and work ethic, as simple as that sounds.
Yeah, man. No, and I'll tell you this, like a couple things that you just said, which I think are really important. One is like making sure that your side of the house is clean first. And like what I mean by that is like make sure that you do the broker certifications, make sure that you can at least, like you said, basically like spell it. You're not going to be an expert, but like be able to know a
Right.
little bit. And then have a couple accounts under your belt, like, just of like, not nothing crazy, but just like making sure that, um, you're coming from a place of like, hey, I actually like know how to do this business. So, I'll ask you a little bit though. So, like, what are some of the things that like, have made you stand out to brokers, or just that, other people? It could even be mentors. But what are some of those things that have made you stand out in the past that they're like, oh, I really wanna, like, continue to work with this guy.
That's a good question. I'd say it's a combination of things. One thing that is genuinely good in business, no matter what you do or what industry you work in, is always follow through. Always do what you say you're going to do. If it's something you cannot deliver on, or if you're uncertain if you can deliver on it, don't promise it, because that's going to be a measure of you against what they're looking for. And if you don't deliver on things that you say you're going to do, it really takes one time. And uh, in order to you'll lose their confidence and their trust and their faith. And in order to overcome that, it takes a lot longer to get back to the starting point. It's like trying to unlearn a bad habit. It takes repetition, and it's hard to cleanse yourself of biting your nails or whatever it is. It is similar in this world. If you disappoint a broker by not being transparent or not doing what you commit to doing, you set yourself back so far that it's going to take that much more time to get back just to ground zero. So I
Oh, yeah.
that's one key element. I would say another part is always being transparent. And if you don't have services or solutions or products that you can deliver on, despite what they're asking for, just be open and honest about it. I think people would find that brokers will actually respect you more if you have to say no in a situation than saying yes and creating a mess, or ultimately not being able to do what you said you're going to do that they are now expecting you to do.
Yeah.
So I think full transparency is while difficult at times, especially in the sales world, when you want to sales so bad, you'll say anything to get it. I think having that transparent element is critical to building your rapport and trust with that broker, which brings me to, I guess, my third thing about it is people are going to do business with those that they know, like, and trust. And in order to get to that point, you've got to be able to prove that you are worthy of their business, that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. So it's three steps. You got to get to know them first. So you got to meet them somehow, whether that's at a networking event or doing a drop in their office and getting a business card and following up. That's the know. The second part is the like. So you gotta spend time. You got to invest time. You got to invest money in these relationships, take them out, court them. You got to date them, basically, is what I tell people. You have to
Yeah.
date brokers. You got to get them to like you. And feel like you're somebody that they want to do business with, and you got to get that foundation of rapport built, and it takes time. It could be months, it could be years before you get your first case, but if you invest the time and you stay trustworthy, you'll get there. And which is the last part, which is trust. And that really, I think, comes to head when you get a first opportunity and they give you a shot, they give you an at bat, and they want to see how well you're going to do. And it doesn't mean doing everything that they ask for, but if you can't do everything they ask for, it's, back to that honesty element and transparency, letting them know, I can't do this, but here's what I got instead. So if you can do those three things, get to know them, build that rapport, and earn their trust, you're in forever. Like that is the bond that makes this business work. And in my role and in your people's role as they're going out and working in the broker market, the biggest asset that we have, my equity, my value is my relationships. That is the key to everything.
Mhm.
As carriers are out there hiring people, like like in my capacity as an example, they're hiring me for the relationships that I bring to the table, kind of in the sense that a broker would get hired for the book of business and the revenue that they have and the equity in that revenue. For us, it's the relationships that we bring to the table. So guard those, protect them, invest in them, because that is everything.
That's huge, man. That's huge, and just never overpromising and under-delivering because that spreads so quickly.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you just said too, undoing that. People don't remember all the good things, but when you mess up, they remember it, and that is what they remember for sure.
100%.
Yeah. Michelle, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
So you said a lot of good points there, starting with making sure that you follow through, building having transparency behind it, building relationship, but also building it with trust as well, right? So winning with brokers, you have to have those three components to it more than anything to actually get a strong relationship. So let me ask you, what separates that strong broker relationship? Because it's a build, right? Versus just from a transactional one where it's like a one case situation.
Well, I would say people that are operating in a transactional capacity and not having a strong relationship foundation is probably more along the lines of a broker just giving you a shot because maybe you've been persistent.
Mhm.
Maybe you don't think you're the coolest person on earth or the most capable, but they feel bad because you've been knocking on their door or whatever. As a transactional based person, you're not going to get the repeat business that you're looking for. You might get a case here and a case there, but if you want to build a book with a relationship with a broker, you've got to have that relationship element. And that's that's how you get the repeat business because every year we got to grow. So as well as you did in the previous year, next year you got to start over and do better. And if you don't have broker relationships that you can count on to continue to build, you're literally starting from scratch every year and it's going to be impossible to grow, to continuously grow your revenue, hit your goals, things like that. A transactional interaction is not going to get you there.
Well said on that. I think about it even in just the book of business outside of working with brokers, you got to keep those relationships with your clients as well. And if you don't maintain it, you don't service it, you have to start from ground zero every single time again. So
Yeah,
appreciate that.
that's tough.
Um, So when it comes to what do you think that with brokers that they value the most when it comes to carrier partnerships? Because I think a lot of times when we walk in, we're trying to work with a broker, we think it's such a different way than how brokers think about us as well, as a carrier. So what do they value most when it comes to partnering with carriers and then sales leaders as well?
Good question. I would say there's a misconception in our business that broker compensation is everything. And
Mhm.
while it's important, it's not everything. I think what brokers are really looking for is the person behind the product, behind the brands, the agent, for example, the me, whoever it is that's working on a case with a broker, it's that individual that makes the difference. it's them who's going to differentiate us as a brand from the rest of the marketplace. They're showing up every day wearing the Aflac flag, and if those individuals can, kind of going back to what I was saying, build these relationships, do what you say you're going to do on a regular basis, and you're always honest and transparent. Those are the things that I think a broker finds the most valuable. If something goes awry, are you going to go fight for them? Are you going to fight like a dog to, rectify an error or an issue that's happening? Or if there's something that they desperately need, or if their client's having trouble with something, are you going to be there to have their back? And I think a lot of times we close a deal, do an enrollment, and then we move on and we forget about it. But that's not the way that I would say is going to get you, again, that repeat business, because the brokers want to know at the end of the day that are they partnering with somebody that they can rely on to do what they need when they need it. They're going to be responsive. They're not going to have to follow up on emails that they send you. The thing that makes me cringe, and I see
Yeah.
this all too often, is a broker sends an agent an email. 2 days go by. The broker follows up. Hey, just following up on this email that I sent you. That is completely unacceptable, in my opinion. You can't operate that way. They're never going to work with you. That's
Yeah.
my personal philosophy is a 24-hour response time at the absolute max. Ideally, same day, whether it's at 10 o'clock at night or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right after they send the email. I try to clear out my inbox in response to all of the messages from brokers that I have. A, it knocks it out of my agenda for the next day. It's taken care of. And B, they're not waiting, and I think that's one thing that brokers despise, is having to putting the ball in their court to follow up with us when the ball's
Yeah.
supposed to be in our court. I think that's one thing that is a really bad practice that'll get people thrown out of a case, or they won't get any repeat business out of that broker, in
Yeah,
my
I
opinion.
mean, I think there's two parts to that you just hit. Well, first off, you're absolutely right. It's unacceptable is the perfect way to describe it, because you're hurting our overall brand as well if you're doing that. And that's also the same thing where, when we have a newish person calling a broker or a large broker, and that hurts the Aflac name, because that could actually have a ripple effect, because there could be a ton of large cases that you might be working on that we're going to eventually roll on. But sometimes we just are like, hey, let's call this bad boy up. And it's like, please do not call them. Actually, so this is our second broker facing episode. The first one with the big ask from everybody is like, if it's a broker that has a big enough building to have a building or their name on a building, please God, do not call them. Like that's like please do not call on them. You were talking about it of like cutting your teeth with broker. So say this is that there's a lot of like small PNC brokers out there that you can start with of having some of those conversations, or asking your own existing accounts like, hey, who handles your PNC? Do you have a benefits broker? Those are good ones that are like low risk, but you could also get some like a ton of like valuable knowledge out of those. So like there's a lot of areas for that. But I wanted to ask you, like, outside of like unresponsiveness or things like that, what are just some other like mistakes that maybe like just some of the like I'm gonna use the word like younger in tenure professionals make in this
I would say one is not being curious. I would say
mm,
live curiously, ask lots of questions. Don't assume that you know things, or that there's something that the broker wants, or the way that they operate. Don't make assumptions. We all know what assuming does.
yeah.
So I'd say that's one key element, is be curious. Find out personal things about them. If you're in their office, look around. Do they have awards or pictures of their family, or, hunting trophies, or whatever it is? Like, find some common ground to build a relationship on. I feel like people don't do that often enough. You might see a diploma on the wall or something, and somebody that went to school there. Bring that up in conversation. That's a way to connect with them, and then ask them, just how did you get into this business? How did you get here? We all have a different story. Very few people intentionally get into the insurance world,
Right.
which I think is super cool because it makes everybody's background very unique. But that's an easy one to get somebody talking about themselves, and everybody loves to talk about themselves. So when you get a broker talking, then you're building rapport and you don't even know it. You should talk 20% of the time and listen 80% of the time. So I would say that that's maybe one suggestion.
I love that. God, that's true. That and that it kind of just that transcends broker. That just is that's true in leadership. That's
Yeah.
true in direct B2B sales. I mean that gold.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important. We're all guilty of not doing it all the time, but it's an incredibly invaluable thing when you've got information at your disposal that they're sharing with you. So that's one. Another one that I see often, all too often, is not looking at the broker partnership as an investment in your business. I think so often we're too quick to jump straight to the point in our minds of how much money we're losing on a case by paying a broker, when in reality, big picture, you're actually doing better. You're going to have better access, better in most cases, better
Yeah.
access, better working conditions, and overall better enrollment, driving more premium. And at the end of the day, even though you're taking less than 100% of the comp, you're still making more because you're now partnering with that broker. The relationships that a lot of our field people build with HR is also invaluable. There's an easy way to make a transition from working directly with HR to partnering with a broker team and it not being weird or
Hmm.
unsmooth. And they value that relationship that you have with HR. They want to use it to their advantage and help them because brokers are always at risk of a BOR. And in one way for them to mitigate that risk is to know that they've got stronger ties. And if they're working with you and you can be an advocate for them because they know that you have a direct relationship with the CFO or the CEO or the HR manager or whoever that is, it's a key relationship element. So I would say that instead of thinking about what you're giving up in terms of compensation, think more about what you're gaining by partnering from a relationship, and that money that you're giving up, that additional compensation that you're giving up, think of it as an investment in your business, not as I'm losing money here. That's how I would.
Yeah. No, I think that's a looking at that big picture, and one way that's been laid out to me is, would you rather have 70% of 100 grand or 100% of like 10 grand? It's like, no, like that other one is $70,000. I'll take that one.
Yeah.
And another one that I think that you just kind of laid out to us is that I said this at our kickoff meeting is like working broker isn't like Ozempic where it's like, oh, this is a cheat to be rich and this is great. I just like it. Now I'm skinny and like my world is amazing. It's like, no, it's long. It's a long haul and it is a lot of work. It's different work. And you gotta put in the time and you gotta, you gotta do right.
Every new account, every sale, every relationship built brings you closer to the LA Legends winner circle. It's more than recognition, it's proof you've turned goals into greatness. So push hard, finish strong, and earn your place amongst the best. LA Legends winner circle, close this like a champion.
So like in the last few years, and you've been with Aflac now, and just like got into the Aflac family really well. So like, what have you noticed that has really changed in the broker landscape over the last couple of years?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. I would say there's a number of things. I feel like having been in this space for 21 years now, I've seen the pendulum swing back and forth a number of times. Back in middle of early 20, we saw the introduction of the ACA. That
Hmm.
obviously had a huge impact on not just the broker business, but the business in general. And there were a lot of things that had to pivot to adapt to what the ACA was creating. We've seen carrier consolidation. We've seen new product introductions, evolution. We saw the thing up in Washington State year before last where they introduced the state mandated long-term care program. So
Hmm.
there's all these different things that are happening all the time. And the way that the industry responds to those things is usually a pendulum swing in some direction. So I would say if you go back maybe 15 years, carriers were going away from, or sorry, not carriers, brokers and groups were moving away from consolidation of carriers, meaning one carrier or two carriers for everything. And it became this, we got to find the best fit for everything, which meant you could have seven different carriers in there: the dental carrier, a vision carrier, a medical carrier, somebody for life, somebody for accident, somebody for STD. I mean, it was just ridiculous. You'd get an RFP or a quote, and there were so many different carriers in play. It kind of makes your head spin. I am seeing an evolution back towards that consolidation
Hmm.
strategy now. That has been a big part of a lot of the groups that we're getting RFPs on and that we're quoting, is the idea that we are trying to consolidate carriers. We don't want to have all these EDI feeds, and we don't want to have all these different invoices from every other carrier out there. So I think that's a recent, last couple of years pivot. I would also say that one of the biggest challenges in our space is the medical carriers introducing VB products and offering like a 3% medical rate discount if we use their VB, or if the group uses their VB products, which 3% on their medical spend is a huge dollar figure. And it's
Yeah.
very difficult for us to compete with that. So that was a challenge. Every carrier felt it, but I was saying years ago when this started to happen that I think this is going to be a limited time thing, because ultimately what's going to happen is groups and brokers will realize that anybody can file a product with the DOI. Every product that's out there on the marketplace, regardless of the carrier, is basically public information. Any carrier can go
Hmm.
to the DOI and find exactly how Unum files their STD product or how Guardian files their dental product. I mean, it's all out there. So any of these medical carriers can easily go grab that information, replicate a product, tweak it just a bit to seem a little bit more competitive, and then roll it out to the marketplace. I think what people are seeing, though, is that they didn't have the infrastructure and the administrative tools and personnel to really functionally administer VB products, whether it's
Right.
capturing enrollment data or paying claims or whatever that looks like. And so I
Or
think
like having some of the plan designs completely, completely wrong, where then they were
yeah,
unprofitable products for themselves. Like yeah, and everything in between, or not even having the utilization or participation that they thought that they were going to have. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
which
I've
they
seen
don't.
a lot. Yeah, which they don't.
They don't embrace
Crazy.
they don't embrace the fulfillment services of like what our field organization can deliver. It's blind, they roll it out, self-service, they do very little. And I think what's starting to happen is brokers are starting to transition away from that. It's hard to argue it when they get a renewal and, Aetna says, hey, but we'll give you 3% off if you use our accident CI product. A broker is in an awkward position there to try to fight that. We're going to start to see a lot more of it because of the pains that people are having by lumping all of that together with the medical carrier.
Yeah, I've seen a lot more of the unbundling in the last year, and then yeah, I've also saw some people do some pretty creative things like adding in our like benefit bridge on top of the bundled and I was like, whoa, that was that, or Ben Extend, sorry,
Yeah,
on top of it. I was like, wow, that's so there's some cool stuff out there. But also, if all that for our listeners, if that sounded like he was speaking a completely different language and you don't know what happened and your eyes rolled in the back of your head.
sorry.
That is why we need Chris and our broker partners running our large broker meetings, because it is complex, and that is stuff that it takes decades to try to understand how to position and when to say no, and when to know like the cases that we are going to win. And that's how, I'll say this, I'll brag on you, Chris. I mean, that's how you close multi-million-dollar cases like you did last year. It's like that's not it takes that expertise. And the cool part about that was we had 20 people on our team enrolling that because it was spread all across Southern California. So
Yeah,
it's huge. So, I think that alone might have just given some insight where people are like, oh, wow, okay, this is not what this whole broker thing is, not just showing up and shaking hands and kissing babies. I mean, that's
right.
part of it, but that's not all of it.
Can I make
And
another
I
comment about that?
Yeah.
So one thing that makes me think of is I think, you asked, like, what are some things that people should be thinking about, especially if they're newer, getting into the broker world. But I think this goes beyond that. It's more of a broad statement, which is that I think we all too often focus so much on ourselves when we're sitting in front of a broker and all of the great things that Aflac does. And we fail to put ourselves on the other side of the table, to put the broker's shoes on and think about their world for a minute. Walk in there touting how great our accident plan is. But the reality of the situation is you could go to pretty much any carrier and get a decent accident plan at a decent rate.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And a broker is not driving their main revenue off of voluntary benefits. It's off medical. So I think where I'm going with this basically is that sometimes we fail to think about the other side of the equation, and that we aren't the most important thing in the benefits portfolio, but we have the ability to be the best thing with all the services that we provide. But learning how to speak in a broker's language, terms like the word revenue and renewal and P&L. Those are things that I think when you speak like that to a broker, it gives you credibility because they're like, oh man, okay, they know what I'm dealing with. They know what my world is like. And so it's important to, as you're listening with a manager at a broker meeting or with somebody from the broker team, absorb everything that you can. Take notes, write it down, and practice it because that will make you stand out from other carrier reps who don't speak that language.
Yeah,
Well
but
said.
honestly, that's so good. I mean, people can take the transcripts of all the stuff that you just said, throw it in ChatGPT, and tell you to do a uh, do a training course on
Ah,
this stuff. So it's
yes, you
so
can.
good, and there's so many good resources. Michelle, let me turn it back over to you.
Clarity builds confidence. That's why every enrollment starts with a scope of work agreement, a simple way to align expectations, timelines, and responsibilities between the agent and business owner. Scope of work, clear commitments, smoother enrollments, stronger partnerships. Chris, we actually said that on a previous episode as well, just to pick up what you were just saying of doing homework yourself to get versed on the broker language because we speak AFLAC very well. We're very good, but it doesn't
Yes,
speak
we do.
to the individual that we're sitting across. And you said it earlier, we should be doing 20% of the conversation by being curious and letting them speak. And it's applicable to multiple aspects of what we do, not just through the broker, but also, as Michael said, really with a decision maker in a conversation or even with an employee we're sitting down and enrolling. Spending time on that, getting versed in the industry, and then giving time for them to speak are two massive things. So I did want to ask, like you said, you've been in the industry for about 21 years now. What lessons did you actually learn earlier in your career that is still applicable today?
Man, the first one that comes to mind, there's two main ones that come to mind. One is that you got to differentiate yourself. And one of the ways to do that is you got to be the hardest working person in the room. You got to be up at it first, especially when you're newer in the business and you haven't established a network of relationships or a network of clientele and you don't have a book of business with a stream of renewals coming in. You need to be the first one in and the last one out. The first one up, the last one to go to bed. That's how I functioned when I was younger. And I mean, I pretty much to a degree still do today. Everybody
Hmm.
gets late emails from me at night. Um, that work ethic is going to help you stand out because people will notice. Brokers will take notice. They will see when you're doing things above and beyond that other people are not doing. And when I got into the business, I was 23, 24, and I had a baby face. I got pulled over 4 times as a teenager because the police saw me driving a car and literally thought that I wasn't old enough to have a driver's license, and they pulled me over.
Nice.
So I always looked really, really young. And I'll never forget this office I walked to in Austin, Texas. It was a sort of like a medium-sized broker shop. And this guy I could tell was a big hunter because he had, big like deer trophies up on his wall and stuff like that in his office. And I sat down across from him, and as polite of a way as he possibly could, he basically said, "You look like you're 12. No offense, but I've probably, you know, been." I don't know. He came up with some analogy, but he was basically saying, "You look like you've been doing this a half a second. Why in the world would I trust my clients with you?" And so I learned very quickly that I had to stand out. I had to differentiate myself, and I had to figure out how to overcome that that objection, because if I didn't, you know, I was kind of stuck like a
Yeah.
deer in headlights. And I got that response from brokers on plenty of occasions. So once I refined, my response to that, I could breeze right through it without a problem and ease their concerns. But then the work ethic came, and that's where, I would really like try to differentiate myself by doing whatever I could to go above and beyond and show them that I was doing everything plus some in my power to earn their business and ask for the business, by the way.
Yeah, and actually ask.
I would say, yeah, ask for it for sure.
Yeah, Chris, that was awesome, man. We definitely appreciate that. And truthfully, if you are that person that just is outworking everybody in the office, or like, or just in the industry or in your company, I mean, you will stand out inevitably, because just the power of that will, it kills off, and it's undefeated when it comes to just of any other thing that you could do inside of this industry.
No
Uh,
kidding. I used to
yeah.
tell people that, in my years of leadership, I would, if I had two different people that I could hire, 10 times out of 10, I would hire somebody that I had to pull the reins on and tell them, slow down, hold your horses, versus somebody who had to call and get out of bed in the morning. That's not my kind of person. Those
Mhm.
people that are out there hustling and everybody sees it, those are the people that find success. Those are the people that get noticed. Those are the people that get promoted, climb ladders. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's and no matter what you do for a living, I mean, that's important.
Yeah, you end up creating your own success that way. I mean, it's a fact. This is crazy. I told you that this was going to go by really, really fast.
It did.
It did already. So we are doing our rapid fire round now. So this is where we're going to
Wait.
ask pepper you with a couple questions real quick. So I have a couple good ones. So Michelle, you're going first, though.
Um, I've done this one before, but I kind of find it. So if your email signature had to include a warning, what would it say?
Man, is there any specifics around, like, what kind of a warning we're talking about?
No.
I might say something along the lines of, "I may not be perfect, but I will always do my best."
Ooh, that's good. I thought it
Turn
was going to be
turn it positive.
you're going
Love it.
to. That was good. I thought I was gonna say you may get a response between 7 p.m. and 3 a.m., that you will get a response, and that's true, like, in a good way, because you will get a response.
Yeah.
So mine was, kind of selfish. So I know you love wine, so if you had only $20, I know you have a lot more than that, but if you only had $20 and I threw you inside of a Trader Joe's to, buy a bottle of wine, which one would you choose?
Mammoth.
Mammoth.
It's
Oh,
called Mammoth.
That was so
yeah.
easy. See, rapid fire. Michelle, back to you.
Best concert or event you've been to?
Well, the event really broadens that category. I'll answer both. I'll say best concert was probably in it was ACL, Austin City Limits. For those of you who don't know, I went to college at the University of Texas in Austin. Um, and the two of the headliners were CeeLo Green and MGMT, and that was a pretty solid show. Experiences in general, or events, man, I would say that's a tough one, man. One thing that was really cool when I was in college, I went to the Super Bowl in Houston. My family on my dad's side, they own a catering business, and somehow they won the contract for the catering for the entire Super
Wow.
Bowl. And So my uncle hooked me up with all these backstage passes, and I got to meet a lot of crazy celebrities. Snoop Dogg was one of them. That was
Nice.
quite an experience.
That's
I'll
cool.
leave it at that.
That's a great experience, and I did not know it was gonna go in that direction. That was good. Okay, last one, and then I'm gonna close up shop. So what's a book and or podcast that you recommend the most or have recommended the most?
It's a podcast called Radio Lab
I love radio.
by uh it's out of New York City. And unfortunately, a lot of these podcasts are, it's public broadcast radio, so it's funded by us as listeners and government subsidies. All of them are struggling because a lot of that funding has been cut. But that show, what it does is it takes a subject matter, and it could be anything. Some of the ones that stood out to me were time, gravity. There was one called Limits, which was actually the first one that I ever listened to. And the way that the episodes are structured is they take the subject matter and they break it down into 3 20-minute segments, and they dive into that subject in a very, very unique and unexpected way. And it really makes you think about things in a way you had never thought about them before. And the limits episode that I'm referencing was about the limits of the human body and the human mind and of space time. And so it would dive into each one of those with different stories of things that people had experienced. And I think it's just a fascinating, you got to just give it a shot. It's been out there for like 23, 25 years.
Yeah.
So if anybody's curious about it, go to their website, radiolab.org, and scroll through the episodes and find one that sounds cool and just give it a listen.
I just
Radio Lab, I'm gonna sound like a nerd, but it's so cool. I'm actually, yeah, big fan of that show.
Me too.
That's a that was back when NPR basically like was dominating the charts of every cool podcast. And that
Yeah,
was
man.
pretty cool, man.
I love that. I still listen to it on a regular basis.
I'm gonna put it back in the rotation. Yeah, I was just like, oh my gosh, Radio Lab, and then I was like, the Moth, and then like other things. So never
The
mind.
Moth was a good one. Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah, I was like, dang it, I forgot about all these great NPR podcasts.
Yeah.
So awesome, man. Well, hey, just wrapping up because we're definitely gonna have to do a part two of this. There's so much in here to unpack, and we didn't even scratch the surface. So I'll start closing up shop. So thank you again for the great conversation. And if you just had one final takeaway that you wanted to make sure that our team walked away with, what would it be, Chris?
I would say work harder than the people sitting next to you. Be
I love it.
curious. And if you need help, call a BSP.
I
well
love that.
said. Well said. Well,
Little
Chris,
selfless
thank
plug there.
yeah,
Boom.
as you should, because that's what partnerships are about, right? You got to be in communication for it. So,
Yep.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insight on how to win with a broker and how to actually remember those key takeaways of being transparent, right? Follow through and build those relationships so you can build that trust. And remember the bigger pictures when you're actually working with these brokers. And thank you to
Yeah.
everyone listening today. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the LA Legends podcast on Spotify, YouTube, as well as Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review and share it with someone who would benefit from today's conversation.